So I gather that Joleen is now on the platform. We're just waiting for her to light her camera and remove her mute, so then I can hand over to her. While I do that, I have to say I'm really looking forward to this conversation about open banking, because it probably is arguably one of the most important discussions that is at different stages of its evolution right the way around the world. You know, evolution, adoption, recognition, there are, of course, many, many dynamics that come to play that will be discussed on this panel today. So Joleen is going to be joining us. Let me tell you a bit about Joleen. She is the partner of advisory services at the management consulting arm of KPMG. So if you think about her experience in financial services, which is what makes her very, very qualified moderator for the panel, she was a key participant and the industry team member in the National Payment System Transformation. So think regulation systems, policy, structures, risk management, all of that. Joleen's very accomplished with all of that. And then a large portion of her responsibilities was supporting the bank and central banks in 8 countries in the implementation of local RTGS systems, clearing settlement agreements. So she has done front office, middle office, and back office considerations all around the implementations of RTGS. So she is due to join at the moment, but I think we are having a few technical fun and games, let's call it that way. But I'm going to do this a slightly different way. So while Joleen is just waiting to join us, so I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. So Lisa, you're the one who's up earliest this morning, your time zone. So kick us off. Would you mind introducing us to our guest today?
Sure. Super happy to be here. Hello, everyone who I can't see in the audience at the moment or joined the session. My name's Lisa Shields. I'm the founder and CEO of a fintech company called FISPAN that provides services to treasury banks to help them integrate and provide embedded ERP banking services.
Wonderful. Great. Welcome. It's great to see you. Fantastic to see you. I'm going to move through the tiles as they are set up on my screen. Christian, I'm coming to you next. Tell us who you are and what you do, and where are you dialing in from today?
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, good morning, everyone. I hope each of you are in fine spirits this day. I'm dialing in from Lethbridge, Alberta, 2 hours south of Calgary. A lovely windy day here as autumn is now upon us. Who I am, at my heart, I'm an entrepreneur. Love the pace and strategy of the startup, have a deep passion for the financial technology, and ultimately where the consumers are the core focus here. My passion for open banking really stems from my 20 years of fintech experience, where I've led companies, startups in the development of financial technology that is consumer facing. And honestly, the challenges we had as a fintech, accessing the core systems and providing the value proposition from the banks themselves was really one of the challenges I saw open banking could really bring to the forefront. And then once I was actually behind the wall of core banking systems, I saw the lack of scrutiny and the lack of regulation once we had access to all this information. So all of this sort of boiled up, and then in about 2017, saw the advent of open banking. And fast forward to about a year ago, today I am the director of OBIC, which is Open Banking Initiative Canada. We're a non-profit entity. We're very agnostic and balanced in our approach, and true to my entrepreneurial spirit, what we're doing is we're creating a place where collaboration can happen, where people, companies, and technology can be part of this movement of open banking, ultimately all the while to prepare the fintech industry and banks for the advent of open banking while we support the Canadian consumer.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, let's move along then to Debbie. Debbie, wonderful to see you. Where are you calling in from today, and tell us a bit about who you are?
I'm cheating a bit. I'm actually in my office at Interac, so I'm calling in from Toronto. And for the audience based in Canada, you all know who Interac is. For the international audience, we are Canada's national payment and secure transactions company. My role here is to oversee innovation. It's a significant focus for us, as it is for many people in the fintech and payments industry. So I look after innovation and mergers and acquisitions. And we actually did our first acquisition last year. We might get into a little bit because I think we're going to talk about digital ID as it relates to open banking. Mm-hmm. So great to see everybody and looking forward to the conversation.
Wonderful. And just to tee you up for a second, we're going to help Joleen get onto the platform. So just, Joleen, just worth mentioning that there's a share audio and video button, which hopefully if you press that will light your camera and also your sound. Debbie, I wondered if Joleen does continue to struggle. I will get off the platform because I don't have the structure of the panel, but I wondered if I could hand off to you to perhaps guide us through the questions. Just warning you there. That's the right answer. Well done, Debbie. Colin, I'm going to you next. It's the right answer. Colin, so tell us about you. Where are you dialing from today?
Thank you, Julia. I'm here, I think, as an open banking champion, because I'm definitely the least qualified person on this panel. There are people here that have forgotten things that I've yet to learn, but I am an entrepreneur who is now an independent senator in the Senate of Canada. I have the good fortune of living in Nova Scotia and having just watched Teddy blow by and fortunately not cause any damage to any big extent in our province, that recent hurricane. Anyway, I'm really glad to be here because I'll tell you the people on this panel know their stuff, and what we need to do in Canada is find a starting point in open banking that gets us really starting to catch up to the rest of the world and taking full advantage of our tremendous base of banking stability, but using open banking to lever that to enable us to access and deliver services and value in other markets around the world. And the opportunity for Canada, I just think, is a massive one. And we just need to get Finance Canada and others to start to act on this issue and get us moving.
I suspect we're getting into that for sure. Wonderful to have you with us, Colin. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm delighted to hear that I've got to call it a storm. Of course, it was probably much more than a storm. Everything is well and good. Thank you very much indeed. Helen, you were saying that you're from the Lake District in the UK. So again, if I could ask you to introduce yourself as well.
Julia, thank you. Well, let me start by saying thank you very much for inviting me. And a big shout out to the behind the scenes team. Kirsty and all the women in payments, because I know I firsthand experience just how much hard work goes on to put on a show like this. So congratulations, ladies. As Julia said, my name's Helen, and I'm the co-founder of Open Banking Excellence, OBE as we affectionately call it. Now, OBE is a global community of open banking pioneers, thousands and thousands now of banks, fintechs, big techs, regulators, all wanting to form a family, a tribe. And that's really what we are. And that's something that I want to touch on throughout this conversation. And Senator Deacon, you were very, very modest, because I had a call yesterday with the ladies from the Trade Commission for Canada, and they were absolutely singing your praises. So it's an honor to be sat with you, okay? But what does Open Banking Excellence do, OBE? Well, it's pioneers, basically, that wanted to gather around a campfire to share their stories, to, importantly, discuss industry issues, and to have a very honest, safe place for a debate. But importantly, and this is a word that we've already spoken about in the introductions, to collaborate. And that's what will drive this growth trajectory forward. So that's very key to our values at Open Banking Excellence. It's all around making connections with purpose and collaboration. And that's really what I do, Julia. And I've got the pleasure, as you will know, to be sat in one of the most beautiful parts of the world in the Lake District in the UK.
Well, you know, you might have other people who disagree with you, because I think very
it's got a beautiful location too.
Excellent. So Debbie, if I may, I'm just going to hand off.
Absolutely.
What I will do is I will just take my camera down and mute myself. I can pop in at any stage if I could be of any assistance.
All right. Thank you, Julia. Great to see you. So as we're waiting for Joleen to be able to hopefully join us soon, I think perhaps we can kick off, because this is a meaty conversation, and I know certainly everyone around the table here are quite passionate about the topic. So Helen, maybe we can start with you and Christian to kind of just touch on, you know, if you think about open banking, if you can touch on the pros and the cons, and maybe, because the UK has certainly got more experience this year in market, been doing this for a number of years, maybe Helen, if you could start to just share with us some of the big wins and some of the challenges and the pros and cons, and then Christian will jump into your perspective of how we need to think about that in Canada.
Thank you, Debbie. I think that's a great place to start. So the question really is, are we going to take it in Canada, to get your party started? Are you going to take a government-led approach, a regulatory-led approach like we did in the UK, or a market-led approach? Okay, so in the UK, as a Brit, I can actually say and be very, very proud that we created the blueprint for open banking. And there's not a lot we can be proud about being Brits at the moment, so we're going to take that one, okay? But that actually gives us a lot of valuable insight and lessons learned, okay? And that's what I would like to sort of share during our session today. So if we look at whether it's a regulatory approach or a market-led approach, in the UK, our landscape is a different starting point. Huh? So, hello.
Happy days.
Welcome, Joleen. You've just come at the right time. Okay. So in the UK, our landscape was different from what you have in Canada. Your regulatory landscape is more fragmented, and you will need to get buy-in from all your jurisdictions. In the UK, we have the backdrop of PSD2 and the Payment Service Directive, and we then had the Competitions and Mergers Authority, and we were regulated by the government under the CMA order. Now that regulated meant that 9 banks needed to comply with an order. So it really was regulatory driven. Now there's a lot of debate in the market whether that was the right starting place. In respect of that, that's where we started. And when it really has begun to take off is that once all the compliance has happened, okay? And the banks now need to settle in, okay? They have invested very, very heavily to comply. And now that they need to look at how they can make revenue from it. So then we look into premium APIs, okay? But ultimately, whether you are taking a market-driven approach, which other parts of the world have, look at what Singapore has done and look at what they've done out in Australia, okay? Or you're taking a regulatory-driven approach. I believe that eventually you're going to need both, okay? You're going to need regulations and you're going to need standards. But ultimately, what you're going to need is an environment for a strong and secure way to manage consent. So irrespective of whether it's a chicken and the egg, you need a strong and secure way to manage consent. So with that comes some watchwords, and that's all around sort of transparency and trust. And that's what I would say are the big takeaways. Ultimately, and there's a couple of other things that I would like to share before I hand off to Christian. But ultimately, you do need standards and you do need interoperability, whether that be through our British API standards or whether that be through the Berlin root standards. Now, this is an industry debate that needs to happen. And we had one of our campfires at OBE very recently called Open Banking 2.0, Beyond the Regulations. And what I'm going to do is post that on LinkedIn after this session, because then you can hear from some of our industry leaders in the UK, people like Nigel Verdon, co-founder and chief exec of Railsbank, a global company, Petel, the global lead for HSBC, Jim Wadsworth, one of our sponsors, and global lead for open banking, and Chris Michael, who has been with OBIE, our pseudo regulator, from day one. He heads up the technology. So if the Canadian market wants a place to start, I always think that it's about listening, and that's how I've built our community. So I would encourage you all to listen to what some of the great leaders of this industry have to say around where to start and the call out for standards and interoperability. That is a key message. And one key lesson, and I did say I'd share a few as we go through, but one key lesson, in the UK, we have something called the Regulatory Technical Standards, the RTS. It's horrible. It's horrible, okay? And it's a good example of why the standards people should draft standards and the regulators should regulate. And that would be one of my key messages to share whilst you're thinking about how to get your party started in Canada. But what I would really say is to engage all of your stakeholders, okay? Really, really talk to everybody in the market and listen to what other countries have done and just get your party started. That would be my biggest idea. So Christian.
Thanks so much, Helen. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, happy days. It was a bit of a struggle, but it's all good. So I just wanted to, as the moderator, just welcome everybody on this panel. I'm really excited to have every one of you on this panel. I think that there's a lot that we can share between where we've come from in Africa, where I've come from in Africa, and the things that we've managed to accomplish, but also understanding how the other markets are more complex and a lot more consensus driven, as opposed to the central bank makes a decision and everybody executes. So when you look at the different ways and the clients bringing them into it, I think that's where when we get to Debbie and Lisa, I think we're going to have a lot more in terms of what are the clients actually asking for throughout this process. So thank you so much for your sharing what the UK has done, Helen and Christian. Being a new Canadian and making Canada my home, I am not going anywhere. So help me understand how we're going to get open banking started up and implemented in Canada.
Yes, thanks, Joleen. And so to Helen's comment with regards to the UK, right? We had the CMA 9 that were essentially forced, their hands were forced to pony up about £82 million into the development of a system that was really going to create a competitive environment for them. So I applaud the UK as being a leader here, and I think from that, what we are able to do here in the Canadian space is really take the lessons learned and apply that here in Canada. For those that don't know, we don't have open banking here in Canada. We're one of the very few developed nations that do not have any sort of key movement in regards to the idea of open banking. And so is that a pro or is that a con? I mean, that's, I was pondering that question last night, and ultimately from an OBIC's perspective, I think that's a great opportunity for us. It's a clean slate. We do not have any regulation in that industry as yet today. So it honestly is an opportunity for us to bring a fundamental shift in thinking to the idea of open banking in our financial industry. Our current fintech industry is currently unregulated for the most part, I will say, and yet very robust. All right, we have some brilliant technology here in the Canadian space that can really leverage the idea of open banking and drive forward with a market-led initiative. And market being not so much the large banks and waiting for them, or even the government per se, but I really believe from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's up to the SME industry to drive forward and essentially capture this opportunity. And again, I think it's a historical moment for the folks here in Canada. So, with the lack of what I'll say is an open banking model, one, and I'm going to really promote the idea of a central trust framework. It really is where we're at today. It's impacting the advancement of our financial technology and really the strength of our economy. And thus really consumers themselves have had the same services that are available to them that their parents had for the most part. And really, regardless of how they're positioned. So all the while fintechs are forced to use, antiquated screen scraping technology and reverse engineering to really provide consumers with a value prop. And this alone, hampers our fintech industry. So there's a significant opportunity here in the Canadian space to really adopt the idea of open banking, which is truly to assist the consumer here in the Canadian market in their financial stewardship. There's a significant opportunity for change. So from my standpoint, I'm really bullish on the idea of an SME market-led initiative here in the Canadian space.
Thanks so much, Christian. I think I want to just have a quote, just mention a quote that we've got in one of our publications in the UK. As customers start understanding and assess the value of their data. So I was very pleased to hear the Senator Deacon do a chat on LinkedIn about the value of the data. Many banks will have no choice but to shift more towards open banking models. That leads me into my next question, and I would like to direct this to Debbie and to Lisa. So if I can start with Debbie, when you're looking at the infrastructures currently deployed and the activities available in Canada, and we look for the push to digital payments, in your view, what can be done to accelerate this digital transformation that will then bring in the things that Helen spoke about, the standards, the identity, and the data management, and the consumer's right to manage that data and give consent either way?
It's a meaty topic, but it is definitely the place for us to kind of focus on. I think, we're at the stage in Canada where the ecosystem are all realizing that we've talked about this a fair amount. It's now time to move stuff forward. So I think to really be able to do that and to follow through on some of the themes that Helen mentioned earlier, transparency, trust. Trust is a significant theme for us at Interac. It's one that we think underpins this topic and other topics in the ecosystem. It really means that we need to have an environment that are really playing by the same rules. So standardization and interoperability is the name of the game. So I'm really happy to see those conversations progress. We're not at a point in Canada where we have a regulatory mandate, but we are at a point where I think everybody's realizing, even if we had a regulatory mandate, we need to have some standards that we can embrace so that actually the ecosystem can work and deliver the value to consumers and to businesses that the promise of open banking, open access, open data brings. Some of the standards work that Christian and his group are looking at, other organizations are looking at in Canada. There's a significant focus right now on standards related to open banking, to digital ID, which is going to be, one element of that, and a focus at the government level around privacy, etc. So I think we're probably at the ideal nexus here where we can bring those things together so that we can, as you say, learn from other markets. We can learn from the hiccups that happened in the early stages of open banking around the world so that we do this in a way that allows us to truly leverage some of the opportunity from a commercialization perspective, but doesn't compromise risk and doesn't, frankly, confuse everybody, because that's a big element that we need to be mindful of. This needs to be easy for people to understand. Even the term open banking doesn't make sense to most people if you're not in the payments or banking industry. In Canada, we've adopted this notion of consumer-directed finance. Some people like that, some people hate it, but the intention is that, it actually puts the consumer, the customer in the center of that equation. So I'm hopeful that over the course of the next couple of years, we will be so far ahead that, the regulation when it comes is actually going to dovetail into some of the work that's happening in the market.
I think that's an excellent perspective. So I like the point around that it must be easy to understand. The last big initiative I did for Kenya, for a switch in Kenya, was a bank-to-bank switch that would enable mobile payments across any bank. So it had the principle that your bank is my bank, and it had the principle that my grandmother can explain it to a. So when we look at that, we'd get to the confirmation and we'd say hakikisha, which is it's confirmed, it's good, you can carry on. So when you look at that, those are the key things. So I want to just turn to Lisa for a second. As there's no sort of regulatory standards, there's no framework, there's no real way of getting into this in a big way right now. in your views, what are the main roadblocks or obstacles which need to be rolled out of the way to accelerate Canada's open banking journey in a meaningful way?
Yeah, well, I think it was interesting what Christian said, that he sees that it has to be SME led, that we can't wait for the banks or the regulators. So I'm really interested in hearing, like, how is that actually going to happen? But the closest corollary I can have to that is, I think there needs to be an accelerant that needs to be introduced to, start to, make the transaction, start to actually occur. To happen is there has to be a new entrant in the market that starts taking significant profile and or significant market share, and is predicated, quite honestly, the opportunity that I see is for a bank, a large bank, or a consortium of N banks to introduce something and or a fintech to come in and capture a market, even using quote unquote old, less secure technologies, that shows consumers, right? So, as Debbie was saying, whether you call it consumer-led finance or open banking, what is the real demand that's going to pull this? So I actually am not one that says we need regulation and standards to come together. I actually think that the standards can follow a winning solution. I don't know exactly what that's going to be, but two things that I'd like to follow up on from the introduction. One, Christian was talking about an SME-led approach. Exactly how would that happen, and how would that help to potentially trigger or precipitate some regulatory movement? And the second is this concept of premium APIs. I'm really interested in hearing what that's meant for some banks in the UK, that you've seen them actually develop a business model. Because I think in Canada, a constellation of things need to happen. One, there needs to be a demonstrable market-led winning proposition that does eat at least market share and shows that we can't just sit and play status quo. And second, I really do think that banks need to believe that they have business models upon which this investment delivers a clear ROI. So Helen, maybe I'll just pass the baton over to you. Can you talk about premium APIs and if you've seen a winning instance of that?
It's a huge topic. There's probably 2 or 3 things that I will say on it. One is that it, I believe, is an important part of the mix because it will give the banks and everybody else that ROI. And if you want use cases, I'll post a whole session we did on this, where you've got some of the very best, like Citibank, HSBC, talking about their use cases. And that is an hour session. And we all live such busy lives. I generally catch up on my turbo trainer. So I would recommend anybody to do the same. So yes, there's premium APIs, but there's also, that is a very, very important part of the mix. But we brought that in after the compliance part. So to learn from us, if you brought that in at the beginning, then you are as part of an engagement piece, you are going to have, I would argue, faster engagement. So it can't just be the banks you need to engage. It is that whole ecosystem. So that's your payment schemes, that's your regulators, the standards bodies. Please look at what OpenID have done. And all of that needs to go into the mix. So premium APIs is a very important part of that commercial mix, but don't hang everything on that. Yeah.
I just want to add something here as well. Thinking about, the banks definitely premium APIs, right? That's one business model shift that they need to make. Ultimately, banks are really restricted by their core offering, their core banking system, and that's led to their business model and their thinking today. So there definitely has to be a shift in the way that they look at their business model. if they're to embrace the idea of open banking and the agility of fintechs, they can definitely shift the model and retain that stability that they do bring to our environment. And just one last point, I know we're pressed for time, and we definitely want to hear the senator
from the senator, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So then, you know, market-led, SME-led, right? It's easy to do, right? We look at the UK, 82 million pounds has been invested into thinking and into technology. And with the OBIE winding down, they see us in Canada as a new frontier, they being the UK and the brilliant minds there. So it's easy for us to stand it up. We just need to demonstrate to the market what the idea of open banking is, prove out these value props, and then, as someone said, I think it was yourself, Lisa, allow the regulatory industry or bodies to come in and give it form and shape. And it's been done, and specifically in cryptocurrency. So Joleen.
Thanks so much. So I think what I'd like to do is, when I bring it all together in a number of countries, so I've been able to have experience in 15 different countries, and some of them were regulatory led, some of them were industry innovation led, but the balance between the two is where we need to get to. But I want to go to Senator Deacon for a moment, and if I look at all of the advocation that you've done up to now and the chat that you had around the data and the consumers' data, what do you think are the key imperatives for ensuring that those journeys actually come together? Because the different regulatory bodies across, I find, are sort of disparate, and we need to see a convergence, not a divergence, in the way in which the government itself at a federal and a local level are looking at it. So if you could share your views in terms of what are the key imperatives for Canada to move forward.
Thanks, Joleen. And I got to tell you, I've been loving this conversation. So this is, I'm reluctantly speaking up because I'm learning so much, but there we go. I love the focus on the consumer value. That's got to be what drives this. It's got to be what we can do. And I posted something on social media today, a study I got summarized that was produced by the Philadelphia Fed, that the Library of Parliament has summarized for me, and I encourage you to have a look at it. But it is talking about the invisible prime borrowers that fintech lenders are identifying and able to show are creditworthy, despite the fact that traditional measures are not enabling those individuals to access credit. Now is a time more than ever that we need that to be the case in Canada. We need individuals who are non-traditionally good credit or credit-worthy individuals to get access to credit so that they can take advantage of the ideas that they see to rebuild during this really disruptive era in the world. And so for me, the driving from customer value is key. The other driver that has got to get government active in this space in a way that I really think Christian and others have spoken well about, which is in a supportive role. I mean, I love the CIO Strategy Council having led the development of a standard around digital identity in this country, so that we can be, I think, a global leader in that regard, which is a foundational element in terms of enabling open banking and so many other opportunities for consumers to unlock the value of their data. But it doesn't replace government. It is a way for government to be supportive, and where there are differences, where there are gaps, government can come in and play their role of being of deciding, weighing off all the different options and deciding what is the best path forward. But there's a tremendous amount of agreement in the marketplace right now that government needs to facilitate the progress of. And at this point, Finance Canada has really been kicking the can down the road at every opportunity versus showing leadership. And they've got to start to move into this space because it's too important. If you can't figure out from the last 6 months how important it is for us to act in this space, I guess you're never going to see it. But I mean, we have digitized at a faster rate in the world over the last 6 months than any time before. And this will be the slowest time looking forward of digitization. I mean, it's only going to get faster. And so we've got to move to take advantage of those opportunities. And so, it's not a reason for government to be absent. It's a reason for government to be very carefully, very strategically involved the different trade-offs that are going to have to happen at certain points. But we have got to enable consumers to take advantage of their data when it can open up such tremendous opportunities for you. And that Philadelphia Fed paper says it tremendously. The other element that's really driving me right now is we've got a great competition commissioner in Canada who has put out a document to help public servants understand where public policy is either helping or hindering competition in this country. And we've got to worry about competition because we've not had any productivity growth in a generation. And if we're going to pay for all this COVID debt, we've got to start to unlock productivity growth. And it's a great tool. Again, I put it up on my social media, but it's reach out if you can't find it. But there is a need for us to really address that issue. And open banking is an area where we have not yet embraced the tremendous upside, the tremendous potential of enabling productivity growth in our economy. And so that's another driver. There's the micro of the individual consumer, what it can do in their lives, and the macro, what it can do for all of us in our economy. So that's what's really, really pushing me. But the last point I'd say that's driving me and getting us to the point of saying to Finance Canada, give us a date when you're going to start to, where we're going to, let's get a target out there. Let's, nothing gets done unless you have a target. And the other one that's driving me is diversity. We have got to make sure that every aspect of our economy, that we're firing on all cylinders. We can't leave huge chunks of our economy outside of the ability to engage fully and contribute fully to the potential growth of our economy. And we're doing that. We've had that traditionally. Black-led businesses, we've been hearing an awful lot about the fact that Black founders have not had access to credit that they could otherwise have access to. Indigenous businesses, we're seeing tremendous progress in female founders and female-led funds, and great to see an article in the Financial Post from Helen's Corner of the World, or Financial Times, I should say, from Helen's Corner of the World, about how the female-led funds managed in the U.S. have been hugely more profitable than male-led funds in investment terms. I mean, we have got to make sure that we're accessing and again, that's on my social media, but we've got to make sure that we're accessing every corner of our economy, which we are not right now. So I'm going to stop there because I want to learn how to do it more from all you guys that know how to do it. But I just want to say I'm a champion. I'm doing my best to be a champion. If there's things I need to do differently, tell me, because we need to get moving. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks so much, Senator. Everything you're saying, there's light bulbs going on in my head, because
actually there's light bulbs going in mine as well. That if we think about those themes, right? If you just go back to those two themes, because in payments and in financial services, we get, and I am absolutely as guilty of this, and probably we get mired down in the quote unquote technicalities. But if you bring it back up to productivity and diversity, now we can easily see how his army of vegan fintechs can actually build solutions that, you can see that, Royal Bank isn't going to build the right solution for, to enable commerce in First Nation communities, in northern Saskatchewan. But there is going to be some fintech out there for whom that market share and that use case resonates. So that's diversity. And then, personally, I can speak to productivity. And this is where, I know that Debbie and others are really working on these foundational, what was it? It was a strong process to manage consent, right? But productivity becomes massively empowered when data is exchanged, in a real-time, meaningful way between applications that, can complement each other. That happens to be what my company does for business banking services. But there will be a much greater army and flowering of such solutions if data can go in and out of banks, enrich the bank's ability to serve its customers, and enrich that bank's data ability for others to service customers. So a little bit of a soapbox, but I just wanted to pick up on what Colin said, because those two elements, I think, could help frame the discussion a little bit more collaborative.
Yeah,
Totally agree, Lisa. I think, but I just got to say one point. I'm from Alberta. It's all about Alberta beef here. But further to that, you're right. Data is definitely going to really spur along the pace at which innovation can really change the way that we do business. And so I agree. This API-driven economy, I think, but the cornerstone of it is open finance, consumer-directed finance, open banking, what have you, within a trust framework. And I think that's the core foundational element to this global shift that we're all part of today.
Joleen, can I just add to what the Senator said, please? Because so you're right, Christian, it is about a strong and secure way to manage consent. And as I said at the beginning, it's, trust and transparency, two watchwords. But to what the Senator said, at our last campfire, we had Amy Matheson, who is the fund manager for Aberdeen Standard, talking around open finance, wealth and pensions. And she shared some incredible stats that should have a lot of resonance with this audience. So they did a piece of research that said that females were 5 times more likely to rely on their partner for financial advice, whether they were qualified or not, okay? And that a woman, women had a drawdown for pensions, 37% of lower in terms of retirement income than their male counterparts. And what she was doing with another amazing chief exec that happens to be female, Samantha Seaton from Money Hub. So you've got Sam Seaton and Aileen Matheson, so 2 very go-getting females driving it forward, have collaborated, that key word again, to put all of that information in one place. So the females that are 5 times more likely to take advice from a guy that doesn't know about this, okay, and therefore we end up 37% with less income. They have created this amazing structure that puts all the data in one place, going back to the Senator's point about data, and that will make a real difference to people's lives, okay? Yeah. It happens that, it's women in payments, so I wanted to share that fact. But it truly is all about the use case and the power that data will deliver that end customer. Sorry, Joleen.
Joleen, you've lost total control of this crowd. You got us going, and we won't stop. But I want to say I got to say one thing: is that women have generally speaking lower credit scores than men. Traditional methods, and that is a disempowering fact in a traditional banking world. And one of the ways we can start to, Helen just gave some great examples. We've got to address that issue. So back to you, Joleen. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. This is the most amazing panel that I've been a part of. So I think what we'll do is, with your permission, I will connect with you all and we will have more discussions, because I think collectively our experiences, our passion, and the insights that we bring is going to provide a lot of a really amazing road for Canada. Just getting onto the woman, I have 2 stories, and I'll just be very quick and then I will just wrap it up. The one is in the Kariakoo market in Tanzania. A Standard Bank, we built an app where we had credit scoring, we had psychologists, and we had behavioral science people looking at how the woman would score on a specific test. Extended credit to them, gave them an iPad, and they were able to take the money that they borrowed and repay it in 6 months and double and triple their business in under a year. The other one is 6 women in Kenya who started Faulu Bank. They were amazing. They took a loan and they started creating things. So when you look at open finance, you look at the customer experience, you look at the data holding and sharing, data request and ingestion, privacy and security, partnership and third-party access. Those are the cornerstones, the key pillars of how we'll move this forward. So I think if you thought you saw the last of me, it's not going to be that. I'm going to get the panel together and we're going to create, I believe collectively we have what it's going to need to get the white paper out there and start advocating at multiple levels. Sorry, Julia, we are just never going to end.
No. I was going to say, please do make some final comments. I just want to let you know that we're going to bring to close soon.
Okay, so the final comments are, I think that we need a date, and that could be a intervention with Bank of Canada, Finance Canada, Payments Canada, and the Competition Authority to say, how are we going to shift this thing into quantum acceleration? Getting our local switch. Interac, you have a lot of amazing things that you can provide to this market. Lisa, your fintech organization in terms of the way in which the data is going. And Christian, we're going to all be barreling down towards your organization to say, how are you going to get us through that? I'm there. Yeah. No, look, coming from Africa, I know and I understand how to get stuff done. And I'm very determined to get it all done. And Senator, I think that you keep doing what you're doing, and we'll be in the back end to support you. And Helen, we will keep looking over the down towards the UK and seeing how you're moving and changing, and how you can inform what we as Canada can do to really move this dial forward. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you, Joleen.
Fabulous. And Joleen, thank you so much for persisting to get on the platform, which was just fabulous, and also for moderating really, really engaging panel. Thank you all very much indeed.